Hello dear student, welcome back to our YouTube channel Educate Academy. I am Gautam sir. Today's our topic is for the class 12th political science, the chapter of the end of bipolarity. In this chapter we will know that how many of the powers or the how many powers they disintegrate, or what is the meaning of the bipolarity. There is the two word, a unipolar or a bipolar. Unipolar mean that ki a single power, or bipolar mean that double power. So which of the two bipolar? U S S R, and second power is US. After the Second World War, these two power becomes to known as a bipolar. So in this chapter, we will know that how the USSR they disintegrate, what was the reason, what is the system of USSR, or after the impact, after the disintegration of USSR, what impact on the political and the world. So let's start. This is the picture of the Berlin Wall. So Berlin Wall is the symbolize between division of between the capitalist or communist world. So this wall here you can see that is the wall. It's built in 1961, separate East Berlin to West Berlin. This is more than the 150-kilometer long wall, and after the this wall stood for the 28 years. If in asking the in your questions board exam, so how many have years the Berlin Wall stood up? So you can call them that the 28 years. So this wall finally broken on 9 November 1989. Now, what is the Soviet system? Soviet system mean that the USSR system. What is Soviet system? You know that the Soviet is the word the before the First World War, the Second World War. Now it is also known as the USSR. So Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic came into the brink after the Socialist Revolution. So after the Socialist Revolution in Russia, 1917, the revolution was inspired by the ideal of socialism. So from that day, the Soviet system was very day by day improvement. And after the Second World War, the Eastern European countries that were the Soviet army had liberated from the fascist force came under the control of the USSR. The political and economic system of all these countries were the modeled after the USSR. This group of the country was called to the Second World and Soviet Socialist Bloc. So what was the main system of the Soviet? The Soviet Union became as a great power after the Second War. I told you in the first line that Soviet become the after the Second World War become the most popular because the Soviet economy was then the more developed than the rest of the world except the US, and it had complex communication. They have a network and they have vast energy of resource including the oil, iron, steels. Even Here available all items and the all resources like machinery productions and the transport sectors connected its the remote and the areas efficiency. It had a domestic consumer industries that produce the everything from the pin to car. So the system was very good, and we can see that. And so why? The main reason is that. So why were the Soviet Union disintegrate? Though there is the reason which of the USSR taken the some steps that was the very effect on their economy and their political system. So is here is the reason why the Soviet Union becomes disintegrate. The Soviet system is, however, become the very bureaucratic and the authoritarian, making life very difficult its citizens. Lack of the democracy and the absence of the freedom of speech. So that's why the reason the Soviet Union becomes disintegrate. So I hope you know that the what is the system of the Soviet Union. And you also know that what is the main causes of disintegration. Soviet Union of the managed match of the US from the time. Soviet Union lagged behind the West technology, infrastructure, transport, most of the importantly in the fulfilling the political economic aspirations citizens. The Soviet invention of the Afghanistan, he attacked on the 1979 and the weakened system even the further. The main reason that's why they disintegrate, and the growth and the productivity and the technology and the behind that the West, this lead to the shortage of the all consumer goods. That's why the reason of the disintegration of Soviet Union. So who are the Gorbachev? Gorbachev, the good leader in Gorbachev is a good leader in USSR. Last time he is the last president of USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, who had become the general secretary Communist Party in 1985 and the South reform system. He he took charge in the USSR reforms and abreast information and the technology revolution taking place to West. Gorbachev decisions to normalize relation with the West and democracy reforms and the Soviet Union. So he want to change in the USSR as like the Western countries. So in the which sectors they want to change, which are the not developed in the USSR, they have to taken decision. So like which of the decisions that are taken by the Gorbachev, the Gorbachev decided that the the peoples of Eastern European countries and the were the part of Soviet bloc started to protest against him. He changed in the two sectors and the information, technology, political, economic. They want to change in the four sector, but his dream didn't fulfill because of the Eastern European countries, which were the part of the Soviet bloc. They protest against their own government. So one reason, and second, the Soviet Union under Gorbachev did not. Gorbachev did not intervene when the disturbance of the occurred. It communist regimes and the collapse after the another. These developments were accompanied by the rapidly escalating of the crisis of USSR and the hastened disintegration. Gorbachev initiated his policy of economy and political reforms, democratized within the country. The reform were the opposed leader, so his leader didn't support that, and After that, the COP took place of 1991. That was increased by the Communist Party hardliners. The people had to tasted the freedom on this time period. They wanted to a freedom, and the Mikhail Gorbachev policy didn't fulfill or aspirations of the peoples. So that's why the reason of the disintegration of the USSR. And after that, the Rus first Boris Yeltsin become the president. Why did the Soviet Union disintegration? What is the reason? What is the reason, beta? Um, Reason is that we will know that, and the one by one. And the first, this is the question worth asking, the not just of the understanding Soviet Union. And the first and the may not be last of the political system collapse. First one is the political system is collapse, while there were the unique features of the Soviet collapse. There may be a more general lesson to be drawn from the very important case. There is no doubt that internal weakness of Soviet political economic institution. So that is the reason political and the economic institution they were weaker day by day, which failed to meet the aspiration of peoples. So the reason is that the aspiration of peoples meet to fail and responsible for the collapse of the system. And economic stagnation, stagnation for the many years lead to the serve consumer shortage. Large section of the Soviet society become doubt and the question the system to do so openly. But this system, the answer of the particularly clear. The Soviet economy used much of the its resource. So it used the many resource maintaining the nuclear and military arsenal. That's why they didn't fill the aspiration of peoples. And also development aid is a satellite and the state eastern europe and the within the Soviet system. This lead to the huge of economic burden and system could not cope with. At the same time, the ordinary citizens become more knowledgeable about the economic advance. So this was the main causes, and the Soviet Union had become the stagnant and the administrative political sense as well. The Communist Party that had the rule. Second point, and is that the Communist Party had ruled over the 70 years, but was not accountable to the peoples. Ordinary people were the alienated by the slow and the shifting administrations, rampant of the corruption, inability of the system, the correct mistake it had the made, unwillingness to the allow openness in the government. So that is the second reason why were the communist party over the 70 years, but they didn't fulfill and the aspiration of the or they didn't accountable for peoples. That is the reason for integration. Next, disintegration point. Next, Gorbachev reform the promised to deal these of the problems. Gorbachev took the very hard decisions. His relation is a very normalized, but he tried to best their best. But most of the political parties and the year of the member they didn't want to. He become a do something, and he become a president, and he did not want do anything. Gorbachev promised the reform economic and the catch up to the West. and loosen the administrative system. You may wonder the Soviet Union collapse speed of the Gorbachev accurate diagnosis on the problem, the attempt and the implement reforms. The most basic answer since of the Gorbachev carried out of the reforms, loosened system, he sent the motion force and the expectations few could have the predicted become to the visually. There was a section of the Soviet society which felt Gorbachev should have the moved much faster and the were the disappointed the impatient with his method. They did not benefit in in the way which had the hoped. They benefit too slowly. Other, especially of member of the Communist Party, whose were the served by the system, took the exactly opposite view. They felt that their power and the privilege were the eroding, and the Gorbachev was moving too quickly. Gorbachev lost support and side divided public opinion. So the Soviet become the disintegrate. The most important question in this chapter, consequences of disintegration. Most of time, what was the main consequences of disintegration of the USSR? So consequences means is a result after the disintegration of USSR. What was the result of disintegration? So first, I will explain one by one. So here is the reason why were the main consequences. First is that it meant the end of the Cold War. The ideology of the dispute of the where the socialist system would be beat by the capitalist system. So socialist system they beaten by capitalist system that was run by the America, US. Since this dispute had the engaged in the military, the two blocks had the triggered and the massive arms race and the accumulation of the nuclear weapons had led the exercise of the military blocks. That is the first point of the consequences. Most of the students they do the incorrect answer in examination center. First you have to read the questions what is asking. So like if they asking the main causes of the disintegration, so you have not re- written down, you have not re- write down there is the consequences. There was the also the mention the consequences. So if the asking the question asking the consequences, so you have to write that. Second, power relation in the world, political change and therefore the relative influence idea of institution also change. The end of Cold War left open only two possibilities, either remaining the superpower would the dominant and the create the unipolar system. This was the main, and the US become the unipolar after the and World Bank, International Monetary Fund become the powerful advisor of the all these countries since gave the loans there of the transition and capitalism and political nation of the liberal democracy emerge as the best way of organized political life. Third point, the end of the Soviet bloc meant the emergence of many new countries. All these countries had their own independent aspirations and the choice. Some of them, especially Eastern European countries, and the European become the part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the Central Asian countries wanted to take the advantage of geographical China and US. These are the become the new countries. So that is the consequences of the Soviet Union after disintegration. What is shock therapy? But that is the important questions. Shock therapy mean that the collapse of the communism was the followed. That is the after the disintegration of the policy of the USSR economic system, political system. So they try to build their economy on that time. In 1980s time period, they government they want to change their of economy. They took the decisions and they changed the system, socialist to capitalist. They accept the capitalist system. So this is known as the shock therapy. Here we know that the details in the collapse of the communism followed the most of these countries painful process. Transition authoritarian socialist to the democratic capitalist system. The model of the transition in the Russia, Central Asia, East Europe, that was the World Bank or IMF become known as shock therapy. After the use of shock therapy, what was the impact on them? Each of each of the country was required to make that total shift of capitalism economy. These country they wanted to change Central Russia, Europe. These country wanted to change the system socialist to capitalist. So this country, which mean the routing of the completely structure evolved and during the Soviet period, mean that the private ownership was to the dominant pattern. Ownership of the prosperity, privatizations, state estate, and the corporate ownership pattern. Collective farms were the replaced private farming. So most of the sectors they private, but shock therapy also invent the drastic change in the external orientation of this economy. Development was now in side and through more trade. Thus the sudden complete which switch the free trade was the considered essential. FDI is that finally the transition also the invent and the breakup and the exciting the trade alliance along the countries the Soviet bloc. Each state this bloc was the now the linked directly the west and not each other of the region. These states thus of the gradually absorbed western economic system. Western capitalism state now the become the leader and guide. Consequences of shock therapy. वही result of shock therapy. So result was very painful for the shock therapy. Shock therapy of the administrated in the 1990s did not peoples into the promised utopia of the mass consumptions of generally eat the broad economics and the disaster upon to the people of entire region. In the Russia, large state of the control industrial complex almost collapsed and 90% about 90% of the its industry were put up to sale and the private individual companies since the restructuring and was the carried out of the market force. Government directed industrial policies and the aid to the virtual disappearance and the entire the country. This was called to the large grass sale. Most of the company they sell out the privatization and this is known as the grass sale of the biggest sale of the world. So this was the consequences and the USSR become the more borrower. This is the reason for the shock therapy. Tension and conflict. Tension becomes the very painful for the USSR. And now the last question is that what was the relation of the India and the post-communist country? Mean that the USSR relation with the India. So India has the maintained the good relation with the all post-communist countries, but the a strongest relation with the till those of the between Russia and India. India's relation with the Russia are and the important aspect for an Indo-Russian relation. And here it is the some point. Amended the history trust and the common interest matches the popular prescriptions and the Indian heroes from the Raj Kapoor, Amitabh Bachchan are the household name of the Russia. Most of the actors they known as in the very well known in the USSR, Russia and India, the share vision, multipolar world order, and the what they mean that the multipolar world. There are the four relation and the economic relation. If we're talking about to the four relation, the Soviet Union is assisted the Indian public sector companies where is the Bhilai, Bokaro, Jamshedpur. These of the heavy industrial sector established by the with the help of Russia and the political. In 1971, the war of the India-Pakistan. On that time, the Russia supported to the India military. Military in the India received the most of the military hardwares from the Soviet Union. Most of the gun, fighter jet, so these are the came from the Russia. And cultural Hindi films and the Indian culture were the popular in the Soviet Union. Most of the Hindi films and songs were the listen in the USSR. So this is the main topic. We have already discussions in this video. So main major question is that the every year the every board exam they asking what was the main causes of disintegration of Soviet USSR, give the six reason valid reason. So what was the consequences of Soviet Union? I also described in this video. And what was the system of the Soviet, I have already discussed. What is shock therapy, what is consequences. And last question is that the what was the relation of the Russia with the India? This is the questions, most important question. You can attend the whole question after the watching this video. I hope you will like this video and most of you subscribe and share. Thank you so much.